Once again, it's so great to be with you today and to have our children from South Boston Catholic Academy. Our principal is here and teachers and over 30 students from our school. You know, as we celebrate the Feast of All Saints and we see our children dressed as their favorite patron saint, when we hear the stories of the saints, we're inspired, aren't we, by the great deeds, and hopefully we wish to imitate their heroic faith in God. The task of the church is to produce saints, isn't it? To encourage each of its members, all of us, to become inflamed with the love of Christ in our hearts and to live lives wholly dedicated to God. Probably it is the Beatitudes which give us the clearest guide as to how to attain heaven and so join those company of saints. The Beatitudes are like a manifesto of what it is to be a Christian. We could do no better than to take the Beatitudes as our rule of life. It's interesting how they are phrased. Jesus does not present them as commandments or instruction or rules, but rather he congratulates those who live in this way. When we hear the Beatitudes, we're naturally drawn to them. We find that we want to live like this. We want to become peacemakers, or to be merciful, or to hunger and thirst for what is right. And through the following of the Beatitudes and by the example of so many saints, those we know to be saints by the decree of the church, or those unsung heroes, maybe an aunt or an uncle, a godparent or grandparent, a neighbor who now lives in heaven, we can, by their example and by imitating them, realize that this is our goal too. As we approach today's feast, I asked the 5th and 6th grade of our school this week to think about their patron saint and who they might choose as a saint to emulate. They look great today, all of our saints out there. I'm sure their parents are thinking they're saints also, right? But they all wrote a little essay on their favorite saint. I can't read them all, but a few of them. Richie talked about his favorite saint of St. Vincent de Paul. He distributed food and money to the poor and spent his life preaching missions. And he was one that spent his life feeding the poor and helping the poor. And he chose St. Vincent de Paul because he was a patron saint of some very good things also, hospitals, charities, and he was born very poor, and he rose up to help the poor just like himself. He made a big difference in life, Richie said. And then Nola chose St. Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, and it was her famous saint because she said that Mother Teresa wanted to be a priest, but the church turned her down, and because she was a girl. But she told her that she could be a nun, and she also helped the poor and humbly helped the poor in India especially. And another saint, I haven't heard of this saint in a long time, St. Philomena. And St. Philomena is famous because she was martyred at the age of 13 for her fidelity to God. And she is also famous because of her death, the many miracles that began to happen after her death. St. Philomena is the patron saint of babies and infants and youth. Nora chose St. Clare of Assisi, who is a famous Christian role model for young women. And she also advised and encouraged St. Francis of Assisi to continue the active ministry. She is the patron saint of eye diseases, and she's the patron saint of television, the patron saint of Catholic TV, and also the patron saint I didn't know of laundry. And Nora chose St. Clare because Clare is her mother's name and Nora's middle name, so it's a good reason you chose St. Clare today. And Connor chose St. Anthony. He grew up loving St. Anthony. And he said that St. Anthony came from a wealthy family, ended up giving to the poor over and over again. He was one of the most quickly canonized saints, Connor told us, and he's the patron saint of lost things. How many times have we prayed to St. Anthony when we lost our car keys. And Connor chose St. Anthony because he prayed to St. Anthony when he lost something and he found it. So those are a little bit of the few beautiful essays that our children wrote in preparing for this Mass today and preparing for the great feast of All Saints. Those were great boys and girls, and we're so proud of you researching these saints. As you learned, many of the saints turned away from sinful ways and became more and more Christ-like. We too, all of us, whatever our age, whether we're in the 5th grade or 6th grade, or whether we're 50 or 80 years old, each of us has a brighter future too as we change from our ways that are against God and the love of God and become the saints that God calls each of us to be. All Saints' Day teaches us that by the grace of God here on earth, there have been many heroic holy ones in the past, and by the same grace of God, there will be many, many more, and that we can be among them. God bless you.